I unmuted? Yeah. Cool. Hello, everyone, and again, welcome to the 154th Melbourne AWS User Group Meetup. Before we get started, just want to acknowledge the country we are on. So in the spirit of reconciliation, the Melbourne AWS User Group acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. Our in-person meetup is being held on the lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners of this land. We pay our respect to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Just as important, we have a code of conduct. There's a short version here. There's a longer version on that link that is partially obscured, but it says conduct. The very short version, obviously, is be good to each other. If you feel uncomfortable with some actions from somebody or see something that you think does not pass muster, reach out to one of the organizers, that is myself, at the back, the others, or anonymously through a form on the website. Now, we're on the web, through the website, melb.awsug.org.au. You can find us on LinkedIn, on YouTube, where all the recordings of past events are. If you haven't found that, if you're watching this online, that's what you'll be watching. And obviously on meetup.com, which everybody who registered is aware. Tonight, we have a slightly different schedule than usual. We'll start with the introductions. That's the boring bit I'm doing now. Don't worry, it will soon be over. After that, we'll have Matt tell us about some general things that have been announced in the past month. Due to some technical issues, through it that the automation couldn't handle all the many announcements. It was something like 390 announcements. We don't have slides for that bit, so Matt is just going to tell you all about it without looking and cheating. Then Jason and I will join Matt, and we will talk a bit more in depth about some of the announcements. We've picked some. If there's time over and you want to hear more about a specific one, just let us know. And after that, Melinda will take over, and he will be talking about Kiro and spec-driven development using that. Last month we had a talk about Q Developer CLI, which no longer exists because it's been taken over by Kiro, and I'm sure Melinda will tell us about that as well. And we'll end the night, as usual, with a marketplace segment, which is basically our way of, if you're looking for, if you're hiring, you can hold up your hand, tell everybody who you are, where you come from, and what kind of role you're looking for, and somebody can approach you. We do it that way so that if you're here with your manager or somebody who you don't want to know that you're looking for a job, it would be awkward to put up your hand. And then we'll all go home and enjoy the rest of our evenings. During the talks, ask questions. As Rob already mentioned, there's an online audience, so hold up your hand if you have a question and you get a microphone. Generally speaking, hold questions until the end of a talk, because usually, unless it's indicated differently by the speaker. This is simply because more often than not, the answer to your question might be on the next slide. If you're watching it online, you can also ask your questions in the YouTube chat or in the Slack, which I'll send a link for soon, if you haven't joined that before. But also want to thank our sponsors, without whom we wouldn't have the food or the venue or the drinks, all the good stuff. Our gold sponsor, Mental Group, and our silver sponsor, Sivo. And of course, I don't want to forget our venue sponsor, NAB, who provides this lovely space that we are in. I mentioned Slack earlier. I should probably just reorganize these slides, but you can join Slack, go to this URL, fill in your email, and you get the whole thing that you may have done before, where it's just signs you up. Get involved. We'd love people to get more involved with the meetup. Obviously, the number one thing we're always looking for is awesome people who want to give a talk. A talk doesn't have to be based on 20 years of experience. If you're starting out, found something new to do, found something fun, you think that could be useful to anybody, and trust me, everything is useful to somebody, please reach out. We'll also happily help you put your talk together if that's the case, if that's an issue, or something you don't have experience with. But yes, there is no such thing as a useless talk, so please reach out. We are on the lookout for speakers for next year. Sponsors, if your company is interested in sponsoring, please talk to Matt at the back there. He can tell you all about it and happily take your money. Last but not least, if you are interested in helping out in some form or another, please reach out as well. We're looking for volunteers. We can use more people in the organizing committee. We have some lovely volunteers already who do great work, so always thank you to them. But more people involved is always good. Cool. This is a different slide from usual. This is about the Community Builders program. I was asked to include this by the APJ head of Community Builders program, Shavras. He built a guide for future community builders. If you're not yet a community builder, I highly recommend reading this. The Community Builders program is a fun program, very useful. You get insights into what's going on, especially at this time of the year. I don't know about the other community builders here, but I've been in a lot of NDA sessions about stuff that's going to come at reInvent. Sorry, NDA, I really can't talk about what was in there. But in January, there will be the yearly intake. If you're interested, I highly recommend checking it out. It basically has a requirement of 2 contributions, as it can be called, in the past year. That can be a talk, a blog post, an open source contribution, anything like that. It is a highly interesting program, and I definitely recommend checking it out. A lot of people from the user group have become community builders over the past few years, and as far as I know, they're all enjoying it. So yeah, check it out. Upcoming events, I only have this one. If you're still deciding whether or not to go, you're too late. I'm not sure if there are still tickets. There might still be tickets. Oh, there are still tickets? Yeah. So if you can splurge, $2,400 US tickets and similar airfare and something like that. Yeah. So if you have $10,000 to spare, check it out. Otherwise, see about next year. There's no other meetups or anything planned for December from what I've seen. Most of them are already starting to look to next year. It's not strange because, as we all know, December evenings are hard. People don't usually come. We don't do one either. We figured you don't want to come on Christmas. So with that, I'll hand it over to Matt, who will wing the wing the what's new.
Easy peasy. All right, so now for the let's make it look like I know what I'm doing portion of the evening. All right, so just picture the typical normal monthly slides up on the screen. Look, as Ian said, the automation broke horribly this month. It turns out that it really, really doesn't like it when AWS do 390 announcements in 30 days. It has which is funny because it had the same problem this time last year, and I put a to-do to fix it before this year, and clearly that didn't happen. But that's, the joys of AI. It's not all it's cracked up to be. The main sort of threads for the last month, if we take away the pre-invent announcements, on the serverless front, Lambda has gotten support for a whole heap of new languages. So we've got support now for Python 3.14. We've got support for Node 24. For those crazy people in the room, they officially launched support for Rust, because of course they did. Everything needs Rust support nowadays. So if you've been sitting there going, you know what I really need to do is run my highly performant code on an unpredictable compute platform, there you go. You can do that now. The world of observability has gotten a lot of uplift over the last month. EKS, ECS, transit gateways, your load balancers, S3, EBS, EC2, and Kafka have all gotten new observability metrics in CloudWatch. Some of them are useful, some of them are less useful. Some of them should have been there a long time ago and are only now just coming to the foray of the world. But that is kind of a timely reminder that it pays to periodically go back to your existing workloads and revisit what's now available and what you should probably be turning on after the fact. You've probably all got workloads out there that were deployed 12 months ago, 2 years ago, that you should probably go back and go, you know what, adding a couple of metrics to this now that they're available probably makes a lot more sense. Or in the case of some of the Kubernetes ones, maybe you don't need to be running those additional workers and nodes to pick up those metrics manually. You can probably roll it into CloudWatch now. So that's been a really nice addition on a number of fronts. AWS also took the opportunity this month to completely trash the notion of how we do cost allocations and billing controls and all of that sort of stuff. They started off by making what I think personally is the funniest API announcement of the month. They announced that there is now officially an API endpoint where you can request the PDF version of your monthly bill. Because that's what you've always wanted, is the ability to download that. So there is actually now an API where you can query it and it will return the S3 URL of your bill for the particular month. Yay, because that's what we've always wanted. On a slightly more interesting note, they've been fleshing out and continue to release new bits for the new multi-org billing structure. So if you were here last month, you would have heard me talk about the fact that they were launching the idea of being able to have multiple AWS organizations bill to a single account. So up until now, you've had your multi-account strategy. That all goes into a single org. You've got your management account. That's the one that gets the bill every month. You can now have multiple organizations all bill to the same account, despite the fact that there's no security construct or anything between them. There are some hoops you have to jump through, because obviously if you've got access to all of the cost usage reporting, you have a not insignificant amount of information on how an environment is configured and what it's running and all of those sorts of things. So obviously there's some security bits you've got to be aware of, and depending on how you want it to work, there can be upwards of $50 a month US charge per organization to facilitate the cross account cross-org billing construct, but that is all now publicly available, and you can actually start migrating orgs and accounts and all of those sorts of things to make even more complex structures of accounts and organizations and all of that, because, you know, your current structure is probably not complicated enough as is. I think this is going to lead to a lot of horrible anti-patterns as we go forwards. I can see a lot of organizations go, why have 2 orgs when you can have 6? We will give every business unit its own org now, and then we will just, you know, cross-charge that back. And it's going to be an interesting time going ahead. I'm sure next year there's going to be a lot of blogs out around what is good, what is not good, and where it hurts to do things wrong. But we will wait and see. I'm sure that will be very funny. There was a pretty slide that I had here making a lovely reference to Futurama, because I'm a bit of a Futurama fanboy. Slurm. There is now integration for the Slurm API. So Futurama people obviously get that reference. People who don't watch Futurama are just looking at me like I'm an idiot. That's okay. I don't mind looking like an idiot occasionally. For those of you who don't play in the parallel computing HPC space, Slurm is a workload scheduler construct for high-performance computing clusters, and the AWS Parallel Computing Platform now officially supports the Slurm API and API endpoints. So if you've been sitting there going, I want a new way to control and schedule all of my parallel workloads, because I know everybody in the room is, you know, aficionados of high-performance computing clusters, and, you know, we all spend 7 figures a month on our AWS bill. Yes? No? This is now a way for you to be able to spend even more money and do even more in parallel and reach the limits of what's available in Melbourne and Sydney. Back on the serverless side, we have some new test state API capabilities for local testing of step functions. If you're sitting there going, you know, the one thing I really want to do is be able to take my distributed cloud-based compute platform and run it locally on my machine to see how it runs, because that's going to be a representative use case of what it's going to do in production, you've now got more capability to do that. There is some less cynical use cases around PyTest and CI/CD pipelines and a bunch of other bits and pieces there, but fundamentally this makes it easier for you to use AWS native tooling to test your step functions on your local machine before you commit to the repo and those sorts of bits and pieces. So that's a really nice one. That is available in all regions that step functions is available in, which is pretty much all regions about nowadays, except for New Zealand. I don't think it's in there yet. What else did we have on our things? I don't think this is covered by the bits that are coming up. A number of services have now gotten what AWS are referring to as flexible cost allocation options. This is an interesting one. It's good and bad, but again, it goes back to the organization thing where this is going to create some interesting bits going forwards. For those of you who've played in the world of transit gateways and NAT gateways and load balancers and all of those sorts of things, you understand that the source account for the traffic is the one that pays for the traffic traversing the transit gateway. You can now change that. You can now, when you're deploying and configuring your transit gateway and your attachments, define which account gets billed for the traffic. So you can set it up so that it's either the source account, which is basically the default, you can have it as the destination account gets billed, or you can have it as a dedicated transit gateway account, billing account gets billed for the traffic. Apparently, according to the information, you can even do it on a flow-by-flow individual flow level granularity. I have absolutely no idea what that means and how you could possibly allocate billing on network flow level, but yeah, that's obviously something I'm going to want to play with at some stage to see exactly how that works. But this now gives you a lot more flexibility as to how you allocate your costs when it comes to your transit gateway and your multi-account and which when then partnered with the idea of being able to manipulate where your organization bill goes, I'm sure again goes back to the concept of this is going to get really messy really quickly. Look, ML, AI, the trend of this year has been that the ML AI slide has always been like 3 times as many bullet points as every other slide in the what's new. Going to boil it right back this month. Claude Opus 4.5, yay, available in Bedrock. Lot more stuff in SageMaker, yay, available in multiple regions, not Melbourne. less yay. For those of you who've been playing with Bedrock, you will notice now that the model access process that you had to go through, go in and select which models you want in each region and all of that sort of stuff, all of that is now gone. If you try to browse to that page, it's just basically a placeholder that says you don't have to do that anymore. Go to the marketplace. So all of the models are now available directly through the Bedrock model marketplace, which isn't to be confused with the AWS marketplace or the reseller marketplace. Those are different, or the partner marketplace, because there's a lot of marketplaces with AWS. So this is a different one. This is the machine. This is the model, the AI model marketplace. But that's where you can now get not only all of the directly supported Bedrock models, but also all of the other bits and pieces that come along and are available from region to region. That is probably about it. That was, what was this one? This one was the, multi-core, yep. Multi-org, we spoke about. Serverless, we spoke about. Yes, the other one. The one big one that I don't really understand. So, AWS service quotas. We all understand what service quotas are. They're the limits that AWS put in place on your account so that you can't just like go to the moon, accidentally spin up a bunch of X1E, 48 X larges at like $38 US an hour. So that there's a little bit of capacity planning and all of that involved. If you want to increase that limit, you've got to log a request to get the quota limit increased. The AWS look at that, review it, send it back to you and go, yep, sweet, cool, not a problem. You can now launch more than 20 instances in a single account. Apparently you can automate that now. Apparently Service Quota now supports automatic quota management. So the system in place to capacity manage your account can now be basically overridden by the sounds of it. Not sure that's a great idea. Apparently, they automatically send you a notification to say that you're approaching your limit and then automatically go and increase the limit for you. That. That feels dangerous. That feels, I'm not sure how. I'm sure there are some limits in there that aren't written in the, I'm sure that there are some limits that are written in there somewhere along the lines, because I'm sure it's not just going to be a blank check, and I can see that being abused horribly. But at the same point in time, this does make it much, much easier for you to spend much, much more money. So, if you've ever sat there going, you know what, I want a bigger AWS build, this is going to make it real easy for you. Yay! And with that, I think that's probably all of the ones that aren't going to be spoken about over the next sort of 20 minutes or so. So I'll get these two guys to come back up on stage and they can talk to you about their favourite announcements from the last month. Or at least the most valuable ones.
Yeah. I mean, you missed one nice billing one to make sure you can pay more, which is Bedrock now allows you to pay extra to get that head on the queue.
Yes, they've now given you the ability to pay more to get Bedrock faster, sort of. But only if other people aren't using it in the process, which they won't tell you whether or not that's happening. So it's just basically blindly paying them to get a guarantee that may or may not actually be necessary. But
Cool. I generated this image. I did not draw it myself. I know. And I did not use AWS services for it. I cheated and used Gemini because it's better for this. So, pre-invent. It's been mentioned a couple times tonight. I'm actually not sure if everybody is aware what it means, but it's basically the term lots of us and basically in the community have given the weeks leading up to reInvent. This is basically the time of year where AWS decides what makes the cut for announcements at reInvent. What can be spoken about in the keynote or later during the day, and what parts are not big enough and gets dumped here. These days, I believe, this is just purely my personal opinion. If it does not have the word AI in it, it's a good candidate for pre-invent. So, as I mentioned, we'll be talking about some of the announcements that we think can be very useful. Feel free to jump in at any time, as far as I'm concerned, with questions or if you want to discuss something else. We don't know everything. There are things we do know that we can't talk about, so don't ask us what is coming, if whether something is coming or not. We'll have to say no comment. But one of the big ones, for me personally, in part because this is dealing with stuff that I am literally working on at the moment, is regional net gateways. So net gateways are the way that you can make your instances in your private subnets talk to the wider internet. So a long time ago, I say that, but I remember when the gateways were introduced, but initially we had net instances. This was basically, you had to spin up your instance yourself. You ticked a box for, hey, don't do source check, do source destination checks, and then you can use that as a target with your route tables, and it would go to the internet through that box. AWS then introduced net gateways, which was a great solution to improve on this. For two reasons: for us as users, as it allowed you to easily set up a very crucial part of your infrastructure, and for AWS because they charge a lot of money for it. Mostly the data transfer costs are quite high, but that's what we have to live with. The big downside, though, with it always was you had to put a net gateway in each of your public subnets, and to save money, you would want to have the traffic go to the subnet, to the net gateway in that same subnet. Sorry, in that same AZ. Let's be clear. So as you can see here, your compute, whether it's an EC2 instance, an EKS cluster, a Lambda function, whatever you have that you want to run in your private subnet, it would then talk through the net gateway, out to the internet gateway, and onto the internet. The announcement they made with the regional net gateways is you don't have to do a big part of that anymore. So this is a toggle when you create a net gateway. Basically, what you do instead of putting one of the net gateways in each of your public subnets, this lives outside of a subnet. It's maybe a bit of a weird concept, but it's similar to like your internet gateway, which is attached to your VPC, but not to any specific subnets. So it doesn't have any internal IP ranges. It also means it doesn't have any availability zone limitations. So for one, this brings a couple of advantages. The QR code is for the blog posts in case you want to go into more detail than I'm going at the moment. But the big advantages are that you don't need public subnets anymore, unless, of course, you have incoming traffic with load balancers and things like that. For me, this is especially relevant because the thing I'm working on is a centralized egress, and not having public subnets there is a win. You also have a single endpoint. So, as I said previously, you would need your route tables per AZ to be different because they would have to point to a different, they would have to all point to a different net gateway. Now, it's a single net gateway, and you don't have to think about, so you basically can use the same route table, or at least the same route endpoint for this. Automatic scaling is the other bit. This has some caveats. So technically speaking, the way it works is it will spin up or become available in an availability zone the moment it detects any ENIs in that availability zone, with the emphasis on it starts to become available. It can take about 30 to 60 minutes before it's actually available. Not a big deal in most environments. Let's be honest, I don't think a lot of us will actually scale the net gateways. That's not something you would generally do, but it can be useful. It could even save you some money if you scale down your instances over the weekend or over the holiday break. It might bring down your net gateway as well during that time. Yeah. No, it will still detect an ENI, so it will stay there. Yep.
Oh, yep, sorry.
Yep. The question was, does it count if the instance is just is stopped instead of terminated? And no, then it will still see that ENI as being available, so it will be available in that availability zone. Billing is the same. So with Net Gateway, how the billing works is basically you pay for each endpoint. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I think it's something like 59 or 5.9 cents per hour per endpoint in Sydney, and probably the same in Melbourne. I'm bad, I don't actually usually check in Melbourne because nobody uses that, unfortunately. And then you've got the data transfer. So obviously you don't really have here across AC data transfer traffic, except possibly during that period of 30 to 60 minutes where you bring up an instance and it doesn't have an endpoint yet. One thing, obviously, that is relevant, especially for enterprises, is these net gateways are generally, the ones we have used so far, they have static elastic IPs. These elastic IPs are often used for whitelisting at a vendor or third-party client or something that you can reach out to them. They whitelist those IPs. By default, the regional net gateway comes in two modes. It has an automatic mode where it will randomly assign public IPs to you, but also a manual mode where you can assign elastic IPs to it. So you can just tell it, use these elastic IPs always, and that way you can ensure your whitelisting remains in place. That's all I had about this bit before I hand it over to Jason. Any questions? No? I do think it's a very useful feature and recommend it.
Cool. All right. When Ian was talking a little bit earlier about the community builder programs and some of the NDAs that were there, this was actually one of those items which came out as an NDA, and we got a preview of the IDE experience for CloudFormation, and I thought it was pretty good. So when that finally got announced, I thought I'll pick that one for this. This is it's sort of its own extension, but it comes as part of the AWS toolkit. So if you add that into your favorite IDE, the CloudFormation IDE experience is now part of there. So on that box that you'll see, sort of the third one down in the image, is where you have this. So it's not really Gen AI, but it's going back to your old school of autocomplete on steroids, though. So some of the really cool features, you will see that there is an environment option there. So what you can do is you can initiate an environment in there, and that will give you sort of your own environment to play in. It will, when you connect and authenticate to one of your accounts, it can have a look and see the stacks that are in your account and resources that are in the account as well. So there's a lot of cool things that it can do. So as I said, the basic thing is your autocomplete on steroids. So you can start with a blank document and then start to do, resource and your type, and then start to put in the different components that you want, and it will do your autocomplete, but it will also sort of start to autocomplete the almost all of the standard things that you would want for whatever it's doing. So if you're doing a VPC, it might sort of throw up your site arrangers and various things. One of the other cool things that it does have is when you mouse over the item that you're doing, so whether it be the type or one of the parameters within there, it will give you a whole lot of info on that as well. So it hooks in with CFN lint and guard. So yeah, there's a lot of cool things just in the autocomplete side of things. So if you're still writing a lot of this by hand and not vibe coding through Kiro, this will really help you sort of, that undifferentiated heavy lifting. You don't need to have your CloudFormation doco open beside you. This will help fill that. But one of the other really cool bits is because it can see your stacks and resources, you can do importing of existing resources into the template that you're working on. So like if you've got an S3 bucket and all your buckets must conform to a certain structure, you can just sort of pull one of your existing buckets in and it'll pre-populate it, and then you just change your names and your variables, those sorts of things. So it was a really cool demo, and so yeah. Do you want to flick to the? So I'll just go up to the this one. So this is actually the blog here. So you can see, so it's got the core features, as I said. You can set up your projects with CFN in it. It has interactive error resolution. So along with looking up what the items do, it can give you some clues if you've got things wrong. So this blog has got some automated sections there which will show you. I won't run through all of those, but you can. That's it. So hover over the different properties and that will give you a whole lot of information about them. Yeah. Then when you're using things like get at or ref, it will help you fill in the items that you've got, so it knows what your parameters are set. Real-time validation. So as you put things in, it checks and lets you know. And yeah, as I said, importing existing resources, which, yeah, so again, if you've got things that you need to do or you want consistency that's already existing, just pull those in and it will automatically sort of fill in the template for you. So yeah, lots of cool things in that one, and yeah, the doco is really handy because it's got all those examples in there. So check that out in the AWS blogs. CloudFormation IDE experience. I got a QR code coming up, so there and where. Alrighty, let's play. Right, and keeping with the theme of CloudFormation, one of the other announcements that came out, I haven't really played with this one too much, but I really liked the concept and idea there, is drift-aware change sets. Excuse me. So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of us are aware, you know, change sets are there when you make updates to your templates, you create a change set, and then you can go and execute that and it updates what you've got. Now, if you're, you know, conscientious, you'll check and make sure that there's no drift before you go to update your template. But if you forget, this actually helps with that. So it's a way that it will detect if there has been drift before it applies the change set. So the example, one of the examples that the blog uses is, say you write a Lambda with 128. Okay, you know, you've had some, you know, issue in production, and to fix that, you've bumped that up to 512 meg, right? Yay, good. That's going along happily now. Someone that's not aware of that, developer comes in and goes like, I'm going to up this and I will make it 256 meg because 128 wasn't enough. Deploys that, and all of a sudden it's now got half of the memory, and you start having the issues that, you know, someone jumped in and manually fixed. So this sort of thing will help that. So it goes in, you know, you can sort of see from the screenshot that I've got up, it will have a look, check, compare, and let you know where you've got drift right in the change set without having to go and sort of separately try and look and see, is there drift, where is it drifted, and, you know, what. So this will actually check, like, what is your code going to do, and have things changed from what you expect. So camera. Yeah, so there are 2 QR codes. I'm not sure if you'll get all the drift one. So yeah, go check out the blogs. If the second QR code doesn't quite work because of my head being in the way, yeah, just search for drift. Let me just go back. Drift-aware change sets. So yeah, those were a couple of the things that I thought were pretty cool announcements that came up pre-event. So yeah, and I will hand back to Ian.
Yep. Or any questions about this? Yep. Give me a moment to bring them. Oh, sure. You can have this mic so you can actually answer them.
Thank you. Just wondering, with the drift-aware change set, what happens when it tells you you've drifted? Like, is there anything stopping you from just going, forget it, I'm going to go with it? Or is there a process in place?
As I said, I haven't really played around with it, so I'm just going by what the blog has said. But yes, I think you can overrule it. You can force your change to go through. But yeah, so what it mainly does. Yeah. So what it's a warning step. It also works in the CLI as well. So there's a switch. Hang on, let me just. Do have that. So yeah, again, this is a reasonably good blog, lots of examples, but there is a CLI switch that you can run to.
You passed it. It was where
Did
you
I?
first stopped.
I think in these ones, it's just showing the setup. It's towards the end, it talks about the CLI options.
Well, you passed them again. Go back.
There's
We'll
right
stop there.
Well, anyway.
Go a little bit higher. But
There we go. Yeah. Yeah, so you can still do that on the CLI to check those out. So it's not just limited to the console. So yeah, I think just a nice little addition there. So yeah, for anyone that's still doing a lot of CloudFormation, yeah, very handy to not have to check for drift first off separately. You can make sure you see how things go when you're applying your change sets.
And obviously one of the benefits of this is also it will fix drift that you did not want to be there.
Yep.
So, but yeah.
So not really a question, but I just wanted to share my experience. I didn't know this is a new feature, actually. I stumbled upon it just last week. So I work at Woodside Energy, and and we've got a CloudFormation stack with a dashboard in it. And apparently there was some automation process that just deletes dashboards, based on some criteria. And that ended up deleting some of my dashboards, CloudWatch dashboards. And I asked the QCLI about how do I go about fixing it. I've got the stack. I don't want to delete the stack and recreate the whole thing. But this came in as a very handy feature where I could simply detect the drift and drift-aware changes, and I could just update the same stack, and it'll fix the deletion of those CloudWatch dashboards. It was a pretty cool to use, yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's great to actually have a live example of that. So yeah, some nice little features that come in for pre-invent and people doing CloudWatch, not CloudWatch, CloudFormation. Cool. All right. So we will now switch over and hand over to Melinda.
Cool. Yep. I'll let Melinda do most of the introduction himself, but he has 20 years of experience in software delivery, so with many things, and he currently works as a principal engineer at Versend. So, but mine, yeah.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name is Malinda. Again, disclaimer, I'm new to Kiro as well. Kiro is new as well, so I'm new to Kiro. Today, I'm going to give you an introduction into what is spec-driven development and what are the core concepts and what drives Kiro. I'm pretty sure that most of you are familiar with AI agents and vibe coding and things like that, so I assume if you are not, please raise your hand. I can start, give you like a, okay. I'll come to that. There's a small slide. I'll explain that. So before we begin, thanks for the introduction, Jon. I'm a principal engineer at Versant. Have about 13, 14 years of experience with AWS, one of the oldest members of AWS user group, I believe, and then I disappeared and came back. And I love to play with toys. So Kiro is one of those toys that I played with around, I think, since they announced the preview in July. And I had to wait about a couple of weeks to get the license, but after that, I was like blown away. Oh, yeah, vibe code is great, but this gives me exactly what I was looking for. So that's why I thought I should give a talk about Kiro. So before we begin going through the features of Kiro, it's important to understand what the problem that it's going to solve. So everyone, I'm pretty sure that except for a few, you understand vibe coding. So vibe coding essentially means you translate your natural language instructions into code. So let's call him Tom. Tom here, he's a cool guy. He just gives instructions in maybe like English and say, hey, I need an API with these requirements, and go and build it, and then the AI agents can build it for it. So we know about how vibe coding works essentially. Now the problem with vibe coding is, if you go back to previous slide, you can see that he's giving all these instructions, so we call them prompts, and they disappear, but the code remains, right? So what does that mean? What these prompts capture? So when you say something to an AI agent, that essentially means you are translating your thoughts, which are like business requirements, into a natural language, and AI agent interpret those language and produces code. The problem with vibe coding is that when you start giving these instructions as you go along, these intents, constraints, and the requirements that you want to capture are going to disappear. What you are going to stay with is code. Now, the other problem is in software development, it's not only one person. Usually you have to collaborate with a bunch of other people. Now, everyone in here, I'm pretty sure that you have, if I ask you to build something, you have a completely different view to the person sitting next to you. So they see things in a different way. Different people have like different styles, different architectural patterns to implement. So essentially what you are ended up with is, if you are collaborating with following the vibe coding, is a puddle. So this is exactly what spec-driven development is trying to solve. There's this tweet I just want to bring out. So when you, vibe coding is great. I mean, if you want to quickly prototype, I also do the same. If you quickly want to prototype something, you can use vibe coding. But when it comes to production code or large scale application development, you have to be really careful, especially around tech debt. It's simply because I would say that software implementation, if you look at any software implementation, is a projection of a requirement specification, right? Your projection is slightly different to mine, right? You might decide to follow a slightly different architecture pattern or a language or technology to the same requirement specification. So what does that mean? What is more important here is not our interpretation or our projection of requirement specification, but rather the requirement specification itself. I'm sorry that again the video is covering the important bit. So essentially what spec-driven development try to do is that it try to make specification, your requirement specification, a first-class citizen in your software development lifecycle, right? This is even more important in the era of AI because we are using AI agents to build our software. Agents can build, spit out code for us, but they need unambiguous intent. If you ask them to do it, it will interpret and then go ahead and spit out the code. And if you have a centralized spec capturing all these requirements, then the agents can use this spec to generate code rather than giving like step-by-step instructions. So you define your spec and say, go build it. The other advantage of having a centralized spec is the code generated via AI agents needs some sort of a traceability. How do you guarantee when you have like thousands and thousands lines of code, how do you guarantee that what you ask it to build is the one that you ended up with? So you need the traceability, all the decisions, what sort of decisions it made, why it's been designed or implemented in this way. The other thing is AI agents can use your specification to cross-check the code generated is still valid to your original specification. So if you keep your specification as a source of truth, whatever you generated can be cross-checked against the original requirement there to ensure that there is no drift. The other advantage is the spec itself. So you might think, oh, then we have to write spec. Is it like OpenAI spec, like a Swagger spec? Do I need to learn that syntax? No, your spec can be in natural language. So that's the advantage Kiro actually brings to this AI-assisted development. Now, in AI-augmented software development, essentially, if you look at, I just want to compare vibe coding. So in vibe coding, what you have is you input natural language and you have the output. But in spec-driven development, you still have the output as a code, but you have a spec as the central entity. Your natural language get translated into a specification. That specification drives the code. Kiro. So Kiro is the solution proposed by AWS. I think there was some sort of like history, I can't remember. Around 2023, there was a project. And after that, they found that what's the best way to improve vibe coding and bring structure to software development lifecycle. And they released the preview around July this year. And I immediately applied for the license. So you have to wait for like, I remember about 3 or 4 weeks to get the license. And but this talk is timed when we scheduled this talk. It was still in preview, but finally they made it generally available since 17th of November, which is last week. So now it's generally available. You can download, you can use Kiro. There is a free tier. Obviously, there are other pricing tiers, but free tier, I think they provide 50 credits. But if you are a startup, you can apply for a pro license as well. They give it free of charge. I think that offer is valid until 31st of December from memory. Anyway, slight disclaimer again, I'm not affiliated with Kiro or AWS at all. I'm just a user or a tinkerer, I would say, that love to play with. And it actually, I found it's quite good when it comes to the output that it produces compared to other tools. Right. So in Kiro, there are 2 different modes. One is obviously you can go back to vibe coding mode that you will be doing with any other IDEs like Windsurf or Copilot. But the mode that I would love to see, or for you to use if you are serious about like a project that you want to keep it for like long time, or you need to collaborate with others, is the spec mode. So as you can see on the screen, on the left hand side there's a vibe, on the right hand side there's a spec mode. I'm going to give you a little demo today. Fingers crossed it will work, because sometimes I found Kiro is slightly slow, but I have already prepared another side project. So if we experience some sort of like slowness, we can use that project that I have already set up. So don't worry about this. I'll take you through in the demo. But essentially, Kiro is an IDE. They have a CLI version as well, but here I'm talking about the IDE. It's a fork of VS Code. It's an AI agent-powered IDE. And it has this bidirectional understanding. That means it can understand your natural language spec to generate code. If you change the code, it can go back and change your natural language spec as well. But essentially, what it treats the source of truth as always is the spec. And it supports durable agent memory with steering and persistent spec. I'll come to those features later. I'll explain what is steering means, what is persistent spec means. What this durable agent memory means is that your context window in your when you are interacting with is smaller and is more efficient, because you have make all these long-term instructions persistent using files. I'll explain this when I come to that slide. And it's AI model agnostic. That means it's not using a single model. You can switch between different models. Or you can let Kiro decide which model to use to save you some credits. So there is that feature as well. And it's highly opinionated. So it's a framework that's opinionated. That means there is a way of doing things. There are conventions that you have to follow. And the advantage is that when you follow conventions, most of the things are done for you. And there are strong defaults, etc. Right. Let's start with the specification, which is the central piece in Kiro development. So I'll show this in the editor later, but essentially there are three phases or three aspects of a specification. First one is the requirement. Requirement is very simple. It means what exactly you want to build. If you want to build a learning management system, you just explain the requirements to Kiro. Kiro keeps it, and it's in natural language. And after that, you can ask Kiro to modify it. You don't have to use EARS notation, but if you say it in a natural language, Kiro will translate into EARS notation. For example, in the below, you have shown that if I say to Kiro, hey, I need a shopping cart, but if the subtotal is less than $100, then if the subtotal is more than $100, allow shipping, the Kiro will write something like this. That means it interprets in like a more constrained manner and say if the subtotal cart is less than 100, then the system shall. So that's the notation it's using. That means when you go back to your specification, you have this concise, consistent specification ready for you. After you specify this specification, Kiro says, hey, go and have a look. Are you happy? Then we say, yes, thumbs up, we are happy. We press the next button. It goes to the design phase. Now, so far in the requirement specification, we haven't made any of the decisions like architectural decisions, design patterns, flows, processes, etc. The first phase requirements is purely business requirements. And then using those business requirements, we can generate certain architectural patterns. For example, you can say, I need to follow I need to implement this system as a RESTful API, or you can say I need to implement this as a GraphQL API. Or you can say I would love to have a single have this application as a single page application, etc. So all these architectural decisions are defined in the design page, because they have nothing to do with the requirements. It's a way that you want to build it. And you can say that I need access, I need to restrict access to the users and follow this like OAuth or whatever the specification. Then Kiro says, okay, I have refined your requirements, go have a look. You look at that spec, that's a second spec, and then you give thumbs up, all good Kiro, move on. After that, Kiro used that specification to build a set of tasks. Now what you see here is basically what you do with your normal software development life cycle, right? You have a product owner who comes and say these are the things we need to build. Then you have architects and designers come and say that this is the way we want to build. So that's the second phase. And the third phase is like your Jira tasks, right? So what you see here is nothing new. It's a simple software development life cycle, but we follow it using some sort of like structured way or an opinionated way with Kiro. Kiro is helping us to build all this. And the task list is like very specific. So it's numbered. For example, your one of your business requirements can be translated into like 3 or 4 different tasks. These tasks include things like developing an API endpoint or designing a database using RDS, something like that. But they are very technical. It's like something that you want to implement, and they are in atomic level. Usually lengthy, but still Kiro asks, again, the same question, go have a look, are you happy with this? And then we say, all good, or we can discuss with our team. If we are not happy, that means one of our business requirement change. We can always go back to step 1, we refine it, we go to second phase, we go to third phase. So what does that mean is, even before we write a single line of code, even before we generate a single line of code, what we do is we go and check, are we building the right product? Have we captured enough requirements? Are we building it in the right way? And we end up with the task list. At that point, if we are happy, that's when Kiro is going to generate the code. So I have captured that in this workflow, prepare requirement spec, prepare design spec, and then plan the implementation task, and then execute. Now remember, all these steps are result of a collaboration between a human and AI agent, right? Right. What we see here is that specification plays the central part, and all your documentation, your implementation, your tests treat specification as the single source of truth, and you can use .md format to see these specification. They are in natural language. They are not like technical language. That means your product owner or non-technical user can come and have a look, or you can grab it and email to them and say, go and have a look. This is our set of requirements. Are you happy with that even before you proceed to coding? And also this improved collaboration, because this, all these specs can be shared, and humans and agents can work in parallel. There's a clarity among team members, and you also end up with better documentation, consistency, and the refactoring becomes safe, because you understand that whatever your colleague is going to refactor, it needs to conform to the specification, right? It's not about like vibe coding, where he can say it, the requirement in different way that contradicts to your original thinking, because now spec is the single source of truth. And also, given that spec is there and it's going to live with your code base, it's going to reduce the drift over time. and it will also, because you can version control this specification, it improves the traceability as well, when the business requirement change, and that's why your implementation changed this way. Cool? Right. Now I'm going to introduce some of the cool features that I found in Kiro. Now, this is not like exhaustive list of features. Obviously, there's a documentation, but you need to understand these concepts in Kiro to understand Kiro, right? Steering. So steering is, think of it like sort of like guardrails or the set of rules that will guide how your agent should behave. For example, you can define all API responses must include a timestamp and standardized error object. You define that as part of a steering rule. You keep it in your project. That means Kiro will ensure that every API response gets a timestamp and a standard error object. You don't have to tell Kiro multiple times, right? What does that mean is, because now you are interacting or you are giving less instructions to Kiro and just specify it up front, you have a reduced context window. You don't have to build the context window in the AI, and it will always go and have a look at the steering files. That's why I said this is an opinionated framework, right? I'll show you this in action. And these steering rules, or steerings, I would say, have different scopes. For example, certain rules may be applicable only for your workspace. That means only for your current project. But certain rules may be valid for all your projects. I know, let's say that errors must use error code definitions may be applicable for your the only project that you are developing, or maybe you think, oh no, this is common for like every other project. That means you specify it in the global scope. The other scope is that not only you can share this with your team members. That means when they develop, these steering rules apply to them as well. You can commit all these steering rules in GitHub. Your colleague check out your code, and he has all these steering rules. What does that mean is that whatever the code that he or she generates conforms to these steering rules. That's what I meant by what Kiro did is you are still doing the vibe coding, but with some structure. The other important feature is agent hooks. So agent hooks are sort of like triggers. That means you can define certain events. Events are like you create a file, or you save a file, you update a file, and you can say whenever I save my, let's say that you are building a RESTful API. Whenever I save my services or controllers, if a route change, I want you to go and update my Swagger definition. So whatever you do repeatedly, you can ask Kiro to do it for you, and what you do it by is using agent hooks. Now you might think, oh, is it like if then rules that I have to define? No, it's not a specific language. It's nothing. You just tell Kiro in English, like plain English. You say Kiro, not even Kiro. You can just define. Whenever I update a file, go update the Swagger spec. That's all you have to tell, and it will interpret. It will write it, rewrite it in a way that it can understand and execute. So, and also you can define a scope. For example, you don't want to update your Swagger whenever someone changes the README or a documentation, right? You need it to update only when, let's say that you are writing it in TypeScript or Python with a certain extension file within a certain scope. You can that way you can reduce the amount of triggers that happen. So event happens, it executes a prompt, agent process that prompt. Right. There are a bunch of other features. I'm a bit conscious about the time. There are a bunch of other features recently been announced as well, like checkpoints. For example, that means whenever you are interacting with Kiro with multiple giving it instructions, you can revert back to a specific point, and it will be automatically tracked by Kiro. And you can extend the capabilities of Kiro ID using MCP servers. You can define MCP servers to go and, for example, look at your Jira. If you integrate Atlassian MCP, that means your requirements could be in Jira tickets. Your colleague, whoever is familiar with Jira, they don't have to change the way they work. You just extract all that information, make sure that your code adheres to those requirements specifically. Very powerful. And property-based testing. This is an interesting bit. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with property-based testing. So I think you know about unit testing, right? Unit testing is like you have a piece of code, then you have a set of tests, you give certain examples, edge cases, and say, go test this piece of code. But the problem with that way of testing is your testing is good as the examples that you pick. But in property-based testing, what it does is, instead of using examples, it generates a bunch of, I'm not sure whether you are familiar with hypothesis framework. It randomly generates bunch of random tests every time you execute. So that means your testing is not limited to the examples you came up with, but also the examples that the agent, in this case, is coming up with. So that way you can find the edge cases that you never thought of, and it's quite powerful. And these property-based testing, again, is not in a special language, not in your Python. You need to learn about TypeScript, etc. It's English, right? And then there is Kiro CLI. Who thought? So if you don't like IDEs, you have a CLI version of Kiro. You can download it. It's available again, I think, from November. So this, again, pretty new. Right, demo time. So Jason, how many minutes do you have? Perfect. So that means I can't, probably I'll start with you can see my screen, I believe. Yeah, perfect. Okay, I have a sample app. I can use that, but what I would do is I'll create a new directory. So I'm in a directory. I'm going to build a tutor app where your students can enroll to classes and tutors can define their classes. All I have to do is, so I have Kiro installed. I just say Kiro, and it opens up a new editor, Kiro. As you can see, if you are familiar with VS Code, this is your home, right? This is completely VS Code fork. So all the things that you see is available with in here as well. Let me know if you can't see. I can zoom up. So on the left-hand side, you can see if you go to this icon, that's where you find Kiro, all the panels required. And here you have specs. Remember specifications I mentioned? Agent hooks, agent steering, and MCP servers. So all these panels will guide you to add, how to add agent hooks, agent steering, and MCP servers, etc. And on the right-hand side, you have your interaction window. You can interact with agent. I have set up auto, but you can pick a specific model as you need it. And this autopilot means that Kiro actively looking at inspecting what I'm doing, right? And this is where you can specify your requirement. So I have define a prompt just to save time. I'm going to create this app. So what I have instructed here is create a tutor management system. where students are assigned to different classes, for example, music lessons, etc. A tutor can publish their classes, availability students, and classes and class availability. Students can pick the classes to attend, and the classes run for about 1 hour, available only between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. weekdays. So this is like very simple set of requirements. You can go nuts here, but this is what I need. Right. So if I open the terminal, and if I do ls NSA, there is nothing in here at the moment. Fingers crossed. We ask Kiro. So Kiro pops up, that little ghost. So the way it's looking left and right indicates that it's thinking it's doing something. And you can also see here that it's working. And it says, I'm going to help you to create a spec for this tutor. So we haven't created the spec. We just gave them simple instruction using English. By the way, currently there is support only for English. So if you are a non-English speaker, like any other language, like Chinese or Spanish, currently I believe they don't have support, but they will probably add it later. Right. So it's going to create all this stuff, and actually it has created. So before it asks me to move to the design phase, I really want to go and have a look at these specifications. But before that, you can see now it adds this .kiro directory. That's where it keeps all these specifications, agent hooks, steering rules, MCP servers, all those configurations are there. Basically, .kiro is the brain at the moment, and or the brain dump. Now I go to my requirements. You can see based on that simple instruction, it spit out all these details, like requirement 1, what's the acceptance criteria, requirement 2, what's the acceptance criteria, so on and so forth. What that also means is, even if you have no idea about acceptance criteria or specific features of a system, you can just let Kiro to start, and then you're like, oh, okay, there is this feature that I wasn't aware of. Okay, great, go and build it. Now, then after that, so if let's say that you go back and forth, you can, by the way, can edit this by hand if you want. Your product owner can edit it by hand. You can send it to someone else, ask them to edit, get it back, dump it here. You can do whatever you want. And then let's say that you are happy with this, you can move to the design phase. Currently, this design phase is empty because Kiro is working, but in a minute or less than a minute, we'll see that it's been populated. All right. As I mentioned, it's slightly slow. Because of that, let me quickly, I'm a bit conscious about the time. Fortunately, I have all these created just before the presentation. So again, we have the requirements. Then it creates this design. As you can see, this design has a system architecture, again in Markdown. I think using Mermaid, and all the technology considerations like I need a RESTful API, modern web framework, etc. Now, one of the things I would advise you to do is, if you have any specific languages, patterns to follow, you would define that in steering, because that will be used to define this design. And then based on the design, again, if you go to the next step, it creates all these task lists that you can execute. You can execute task one by one, or you can simply ask Kiro, hey Kiro, execute all the tasks. Or you can say, hey Kiro, execute tasks until step 4.3, and it will do it for you. I found it easier rather than go and click all these. You can build them one by one. So at the end of the execution of all these tasks, what you have is an application like this. And that's it. When you go back, you can refine the requirements, and you can go through the steps again. You have a slightly changed application. One of the other things I want to quickly show you is steering. Sorry, agent hooks. whenever, let's say that I want to make sure that no one adds any API keys to or sensitive information, I can say if an API key or sensitive credentials are detected, warn the developer. Now, in this case also, I haven't used any specific syntax. All I'm just saying is, if you see an API key, just warn the developer. Sorry. Right. I'm creating an agent hook. Let's see whether this is available in action. Hopefully, Kiro is looking left to right. It's working on it. Right. So it creates the hook. It creates a bunch of these. It knows that this hook need to be triggered when the file is saved. Let's say one of the naughty developers decide to add an API key. Where is my source? Let's say that someone defined something like API key or anything that sounds like an API key. I don't know whether this will be detected. Fingers crossed. I save the file. Ooh, it detected. See, so by giving simple English instructions or natural language instructions, I would say, we created an agent hook, and it warns me that, okay, you have this problem, this is really bad, use .env file, blah blah blah. I say, I'm sorry, Kiro, I'm going to remove it, and actually it removed. Yeah, sometimes when you work with agents, unexpected things happen. It actually removed it. Okay, right. Quickly going back to some tips. So there are a bunch of tips. I think almost time, and I would leave you if you have to ask some questions. This is the time. Everyone who asks a question in the audience will get one of these.
Okay, we'll do one question.
Yeah.
I was just curious, do you have any things that you're looking for Kiro in the future, like any improvements that you're hoping to see in the future for Kiro?
Yeah, so again, a disclaimer, I haven't used this in like a production setting. Again, new. Most of the time for my pet projects, now by default I'm going to Kiro, just start building it. One of the things I would say, the learning curve still is, I found it a bit higher coming from vibe coding. So whatever the way they can remove that learning curve, that's going to help. But I really love the feature that even though there's sort of like learning curve, you need to understand the concept of like steering, agents, agent hooks, etc. What they have made is everything is like natural language. So you don't need to learn a syntax. You just need to know that this particular feature exists, and then start using it. And the other things, I think it's a bit costly. So if they can, for example, if you start a new account, I think you get about 50 credits. I think I use about half of it in this month. So yeah, so it's going to cost me a lot of credits. I'm sure there are ways to optimize how you use your credits, like, you know, rather than dumping them into your context, you can dump them to steering files. That way it's in local rather than in the context window. That way your churning is quite low. Yeah, so suggestions are like, if you're listening, Kiro, developers, please give us more credit.
Cool. Let's leave other questions. Just they can approach you.
Yep.
Thank you for your talk.
No worries.
A couple of remarks about Kiro from my side. I mentioned the Community Builders program earlier today. that could have given you access months before it became available to the rest of the world, which was quite nice. And the Kiro CLI, that is not a new product. It is literally the QCLI with a new name. But for now, let's get back to our regular program. Marketplace, is anybody hiring at the end of the year, which is not really usually? Yes, excellent. Let me give you the mic.
Hello, yes, so I'm from APA down in Melbourne, and we're looking for some data engineers. So lead data and AI engineer and data engineer. So that's Databricks background and ideally AWS experience. So I've got some handouts here for anyone interested, and I've also posted it on the Slack group in the jobs channel. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else? Not right now? Cool. Then I want to do one last shout out to our sponsors for the evening, Mental Group, Civo and NAP, who have been with us throughout 2025. Also a shout out to Melinda for this excellent talk on Kiro. And then our next meetup is next year. Location undetermined because of red tape at NAP. No offense, we love NAP and we're hoping that we'll be back here next year. That's it. I hope everybody has a lovely rest of the year. And yeah, see you back next year. Thank you.